I've been flying rescue helicopters for more than 20 years, and in all that time, I thought I had seen everything. Storms that swallowed mountains, missing hikers who reappeared days later covered in mud and disbelief, even strange lights in the sky that I always blamed on exhaustion. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I witnessed on that morning. It was just after sunrise when my radio cracked with interference, followed by the dispatcher's voice. "Pilot 49, we have a missing hiker in Sector Delta. Last contact, 18 hours ago." Sector Delta, a dense portion of the forest I never liked flying over. The vegetation there was so thick that even sunlight struggled to touch the ground. People called it the dead zone, mostly as a joke. But I always sensed something wrong with that place. Too quiet, too still. I strapped into the cockpit, completed the pre-flight checks automatically, and lifted the aircraft off the ground. The moment I climbed above the treetops, a heavy mist began to roll in, as if rising to meet me. Strange for that hour, strange for the season, but I'd learned to ignore oddities of weather. The forest had its moods. The mission briefing replayed in my mind. The missing hiker, a 29-year-old man, had been doing a solo trail run. He sent a photo to a friend late in the afternoon, smiling, sweaty, showing off the river he had crossed. After that, silence. People underestimate how quickly the wilderness can swallow someone whole. As I approached Sector Delta, I felt a weight settle on my chest. Not fear exactly, but anticipation, the kind your instincts whisper when something is out of place. I lowered altitude and began a slow grid search. That was when the instrument started acting up. The compass needle jittered violently, spinning nearly half a circle before freezing. The GPS blinked, lost signal, returned, then vanished again. The radio hissed like something was breathing into it. I tapped the dashboard. No change. "Great," I muttered. Of all days. I steadied the aircraft and looked down. The forest below was unnaturally still. No birds scattering from the rotors, no animals darting for cover, not even branches swaying. It felt like the entire jungle was holding its breath. I switched to the thermal camera, standard procedure for locating a warm body among the trees. At first I saw nothing but the usual patches of heat. Sun-warmed rocks, trapped pockets of air, a few scattered animals farther north, then something new, something off, a heat signature, large, upright, humanoid. My pulse kicked hard. I zoomed in. The figure was standing between two massive trees, motionless as if listening. The shape was tall, far taller than any man, and unnaturally slender. The arms hung low, almost too low. And the head had a strange, elongated silhouette. At first I convinced myself it had to be a tree trunk distorted by heat, a trick of angle, anything remotely rational. But then it moved, slowly, deliberately, like it was choosing its path. I steadied my hand and zoomed again, just as the figure shifted its weight and revealed something over its shoulder. A human body. My throat went dry. I leaned closer to the monitor, barely breathing. The body looked limp, arms dangling, head resting forward as if unconscious. For a moment I froze entirely, my brain refusing to believe the images coming through. I blinked. I adjusted the lens. I wiped the glass, but the figure didn't vanish. It didn't dissolve into branches and shadows like a trick of light. It was real. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to pull away. Every instinct screamed at me to climb altitude, to get out of there, yet something stronger held me in place. Duty, shock, maybe even a morbid curiosity. The figure took another step, and then stopped. It lifted its head and looked straight at me. Even through the cockpit glass, through the mist, through the impossible distance, I felt that gaze hit me like a physical force. Not angry, not surprised, just aware, deeply, unsettlingly aware. My breath caught. My hands trembled around the controls. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely afraid of the sky beneath me. The creature shifted its grip on the body, almost protectively, and pivoted toward the deeper part of the forest. And just like that, it walked into the shadows and vanished. I didn't know it then, but that moment was only the beginning of the day that would change everything I thought I knew about the world. I stayed hovering above that section of the forest longer than I should have. The rotor wash was pushing the treetops back and forth, but nothing below reacted the way a normal forest should. No birds took flight, no animals scattered. It was as if the entire wilderness had slipped into some kind of suspended stillness the moment that creature vanished from view. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. My hands were trembling slightly on the controls, and I hated that. I'm a pilot who has flown through storms that nearly tore the blades off my helicopter. I've extracted injured hikers dangling from cliffs with winds so strong they ripped the headset from my ears. Fear was familiar to me. But this was different. This was the kind of fear that sits behind your ribs and whispers. Still, I pushed forward. I replayed the footage again, watching the elongated figure step deeper into the trees with that limp body over its shoulder. I froze the frame at the exact moment it looked at me. Even in a still image, the gaze felt wrong. Too direct, too aware, as if it understood what a camera was. I closed the screen. I couldn't let myself get pulled into the footage again. I needed to keep flying. "Base, this is 4 to 9, I said, keeping my voice steady. "Running a second sweep of Delta Sector. Signal interference is increasing. Advise." A few seconds of static answered me. Then, "Copy, 4 to 9. Continue sweep. Ground search team en route. Maintain standard altitude. Report any visual contact." I hesitated. If I told them I had already made visual contact, just not the kind anyone wants to hear about, I would be pulled off the mission immediately. And worse, they wouldn't believe me. They'd think I was exhausted or hallucinating, or worse, unfit to fly. I wasn't ready for that, so I flew lower. I scanned the forest again with the thermal camera. Nothing. Not even the faintest residual heat from the creature's movements. It was as if the forest had swallowed its signature whole. Then something caught my attention on the far left of the screen. An irregular shape caught between two branches. I banked the helicopter carefully to get a better angle. A torn piece of fabric, bright against the greens and browns, unmistakably human. I lowered altitude until I could make out the pattern. A strip of blue, ripped at the edges, fluttering weakly with the wind from my rotors. It looked like part of a sleeve, maybe from a running shirt. "Base, I have a possible clothing fragment," I said. "Marking coordinates now." Finally, something normal, something that made sense, something I could report without sounding insane. "Coordinates received," Base responded. "Ground team will check it out. Continue sweep, but do not descend further. Visibility is too low." Roger. I climbed slightly, but every part of me was resisting the instruction. There was something in that forest, something that was moving with purpose, carrying someone who might still be alive. The responsible thing would have been to wait for the ground team, but I wasn't feeling responsible. I was feeling obsessed. I scanned the tree line again. My eyes kept drifting to the shadows between the trunks, expecting movement. I didn't see the creature again, but the sensation, it was still there, the feeling of being watched. It's hard to describe if you've never felt it in the sky. Up there, you're usually the apex observer, the one who sees everything while remaining unseen. But not now. The longer I hovered, the more convinced I became that whatever was in that forest hadn't left. It was simply waiting. I made another slow circle above the area. The instruments flickered again, compass spinning, GPS cutting in and out. Then the radio emitted a long, deep hum, like a frequency being bent. I tapped the panel. Nothing. "Base, do you copy?" Silence. Just that humming. Lower now, almost like a vibration. I felt my stomach drop. Mechanical failures are one thing, but interference that behaves like intelligence, that's something else. I lifted altitude again, and the humming stopped instantly. Clear radio, clear instruments, clear everything, as if the forest turned the switch off. I looked back at the coordinates of the torn fabric. The patch of blue looked impossibly small from above, almost swallowed by the branches now. But I knew, and I felt it in my bones, that the creature carrying the missing man hadn't gone far. Not yet. And an even stranger thought hit me. It had let me see it. No wild animal would do that. No human could move like that. And nothing natural vanishes without leaving any heat trace. Whatever I was dealing with wasn't just alive. It was aware. And the deeper I stared into that forest, the more I felt certain. It didn't want to be found, but it didn't want me to leave either. I circled the area again, trying to calm the adrenaline crashing through my body. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something sharper, something like anticipation. I had the strange, uncomfortable feeling that I wasn't merely searching for the missing hiker. I was following something that already knew I was there. As I adjusted altitude, the thermal camera flickered for a moment. Then, a flash, a shape. Not the creature, not the man, something else. It was a pulse of heat, like a brief explosion of warmth in the middle of the forest canopy, here and gone in less than a second. I froze. The image returned to normal. No anomaly, no residual heat. Just trees. Infinite, suffocating trees. What the hell was that? I whispered. I replayed the last 2 seconds. Nothing. The camera hadn't recorded the spike. But I knew what I saw. Something had lit up beneath the treetops. A surge of energy that looked almost directional. I steadied my hands. This wasn't the time to panic. Base, this is 4-9. I'm picking up intermittent thermal anomalies, I said carefully. Possibly environmental, possibly equipment malfunction. Please advise. Static. I frowned and repeated the call. More static. Then something else. A new sound slipped into the radio, quiet at first, like distant crackling, but the tone shifted, stretched, and morphed into something rhythmic, not mechanical, not random, patterned, a series of sharp pulses, then a long, low hum, then silence again. Base? Base, do you read? Nothing. The air in the cockpit felt suddenly heavy, as if the pressure had dropped. I checked altitude, normal. Temperature, normal. Engine readings, normal. It was only the forest below that wasn't. I lowered altitude again, slowly this time, cautious, ready to ascend the second something went wrong. The moment I dipped beneath 200 feet, the hums started again. Louder now, closer, almost inside the cockpit. I tapped the headset, then ripped it off entirely. But the hum kept going. I felt it through the metal frame of the aircraft. Okay, think. I forced myself to breathe steadily. This has to be natural. Resonance from terrain, some kind of geological frequency, something explainable. But I didn't believe my own words. Then the thermal camera flickered again. Another pulse, stronger, more defined. This time it wasn't just a flash, it was a shape. A perfect bright circle, like a ring of heat appearing for a split second on the forest floor, then dissolving as though the earth itself had swallowed it. I zoomed in, nothing there. A cold shiver moved down my spine. Whatever was happening down there, it wasn't human, and it wasn't random. I took a deep breath and tried base again. 4-9 to base. I have multiple unexplained anomalies in Delta Sector. Severe interference. Please confirm my last transmission. At first I thought I'd lost the signal entirely. Then a fractured voice broke through. 9. Repeat. Altitude. Dangerous. The message was shredded, incomplete. But one word cut through clearly. Dangerous. And I wasn't sure if they meant the altitude, the area, or what I was flying toward. I adjusted course slightly to reposition above the torn fabric I'd found earlier. The forest there felt different, darker, denser, like a bruise spreading across skin. I hovered again, scanning slowly. Nothing. Then something unexpected happened. My radar pinged, an object moving beneath the canopy. Fast. I zoomed the thermal camera, but there was no trace of heat. Whatever was moving was colder than the environment around it. It darted between trees with precision, making straight, deliberate lines as if it had a destination. The radar lost it for a second, then picked it up farther east. It was heading somewhere, quickly, purposefully. And that's when a chilling realization settled into me. It wasn't running from me. It was leading me. My grip tightened on the controls. Every survival instinct screamed to climb, to retreat, to leave the forest and never come back. But something stronger kept me there, a responsibility maybe, a need for answers, a refusal to let that hiker vanish without a trace. I moved east, following the faint radar signal. The hum returned inside the frame of the aircraft, steady, rhythmic, almost pulsing with each small movement of the shape below. I felt the unease twist in my gut. Whatever was beneath the trees, it wasn't alone. The forest wasn't just hiding one creature. It was hiding something larger, something organized, and for the first time since arriving in Sector Delta, I had the terrible certainty that I wasn't searching for a missing man anymore. I was flying into something I wasn't meant to see. I followed the faint radar trace east, pushing the helicopter deeper into Sector Delta than I had ever flown before. The trees knitted together so tightly that the forest below looked like a single living organism, breathing, shifting, pulsing with something I couldn't name. The strange hum inside the aircraft frame grew softer the farther east I moved, which should have comforted me. It didn't, because something else replaced it, a new sound. A faint clicking like two stones tapping together, coming through the radio, regular and spaced, not static, not interference. A pattern. For a moment, I wondered if it was bass trying to break through the noise, but deep down I knew better. This clicking wasn't coming from any human transmitter, it was coming from the forest. I swallowed hard and forced myself to stay focused. The radar signal dipped and rose again, as if the object was weaving between thick trunks. I lowered the aircraft slightly, careful not to risk the blades. My eyes scanned the canopy non-stop, waiting for another thermal flash, another pulse, another impossible silhouette. Nothing, just a quiet that felt unnatural, too perfect, too controlled. Then the trees broke. A clearing, perfectly circular, maybe 40 meters wide, cut into the forest like someone had removed the treetops with a giant invisible blade. The grass inside was darker than normal undergrowth, flattened in strange curved lines, like something heavy had moved through it repeatedly. I felt an involuntary shiver. Clearings like that don't occur naturally, not in this part of the country. I hovered above the center, feeling the helicopter vibrate with a tension I couldn't explain. My stomach twisted. The air above the clearing felt thicker, warmer, charged with static. And then it happened again. A flash. A perfect ring of heat blossomed on the thermal camera right in the center of the clearing, bright, circular, deliberate. My heart slammed against my ribs. It was the same ring I'd seen earlier, just more defined, more powerful. "What are you?" I whispered, instinctively zooming the camera. The ring pulsed once, then vanished. No residual heat, no signature, no explanation, just gone. "Base, this is 4-9, I said, trying to force my voice steady. "I'm above an anomalous clearing, multiple transient heat signatures, requesting ground team ETA. The response came broken and strained. 4-9, hold, position, repeat, do not descend. Not descend. They had never told me that before. A cold realization crept into me. This wasn't the first time something strange happened in this forest. Base knew more than they were saying. But before I could question it, Something moved. Not on the thermal camera, not on radar, directly beneath me. A ripple in the grass, subtle but unmistakable, as if something was moving just below the surface, sinking into or rising out of the earth. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. Another ripple, another, then stillness. What the hell is going on down there? I dropped a small infrared marker into the clearing, a standard tool used for guiding ground teams at night. It should have blinked regularly as it fell. It didn't. The second it passed the rotor wash and descended into open air, the blinking stopped. The signal died. The device vanished. Not behind a tree, not in tall grass. It vanished mid-air, as if swallowed by the clearing itself. My skin went cold. Nothing should erase a beacon like that. Those markers keep transmitting even underwater. I tightened my grip on the controls. I should have pulled back, climbed, retreated, waited for the ground team, followed protocol like a sane pilot. But I couldn't leave. Not after what I'd seen earlier, not while a missing man might be somewhere beneath that canopy. I made one slow circle around the clearing. My eyes locked onto every shadow, every movement, every anomaly. The forest watched me back. Then something new appeared on the camera, a second ring, larger, fainter, like the echo of the first one, and at the center of it, a small heat signature. Not the creature, not a massive pulse of energy, a small, human-shaped warmth. Someone alive. My heart leapt, but the signature flickered, faded, and disappeared again. Alive? Or just residual heat? Or something the forest wanted me to believe? Base, I have possible heat trace consistent with human size, I said quickly. It's faint. It's... The radio exploded with sound. A long, piercing tone swallowed the cockpit, louder than anything I'd heard all morning. I flinched as it vibrated through the controls, through the metal frame, through my bones. The clearing below brightened on the thermal camera. Something was building. Something was rising. Something I was not meant to see. For the first time that day, a thought struck me with absolute clarity. The forest wasn't hiding a creature. It was hiding an event, and I was hovering directly above it. The tone screaming through the cockpit felt like it was drilling straight into my skull. I gritted my teeth, tried to turn the volume down, but it wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was in the metal, in the glass, in the very frame of the helicopter. The clearing below glowed on the thermal camera like hot breath on cold glass. "Come on, stay together," I muttered to the aircraft, as if talking to a nervous animal. Then, without warning, silence. The tone stopped so abruptly that my ears rang from the absence of it. My hands were still tight on the controls, every muscle braced for something that didn't come. For a few terrifying seconds, everything was still. No hum, no tone, no anomaly. Then the thermal camera lit up. At first I thought it was another ring, but this was different. The heat signature rose from the center of the clearing like a vertical column, a shimmering pillar of warmth, narrow and bright. It pulsed once, twice, as if something was stepping through it. My heart felt like it had been grabbed by a fist. I zoomed in as far as the camera would allow. The pillar faded, and in its place, a shape. Tall, slender, too long in all the wrong places. It was the same figure I had seen before. The same impossible silhouette. And over its shoulder, a human body. My grip on the controls tightened so much my knuckles hurt. The helicopter drifted slightly sideways. I corrected without thinking, my eyes glued to the screen. It was clearer now. Closer, there was no mistaking it. Long limbs, elongated head. Movements that didn't look like walking, but like gliding. Each step too smooth, too precise, as if gravity didn't apply the same way. The body slung over its shoulder hung limp. I couldn't see the face, but the size matched the missing hiker's profile. Adult, slender build, no visible struggle. I swallowed hard. I knew I should have looked away. I knew that every second I stayed there watching, I was choosing curiosity over safety. But I couldn't stop filming. My hand reached out almost on its own and hit the manual record button, just to be sure. Even if the onboard system was already recording, I wanted redundancy. I wanted proof that I wasn't losing my mind. "Base, this is 4 to 9, I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. "I have visual on an unidentified entity carrying what appears to be a human body. I am recording. Repeat, I am recording." The radio crackled with distorted sound, but no clear words came back. Below, the creature stopped. It turned its head slightly as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Then slowly, so slowly it made my skin crawl, it tilted its head upward. It looked straight at the helicopter, straight at me. Through the camera feed I couldn't see eyes, not clearly, but there was an angle to the head, a stillness in the movement that felt like direct contact. Not with the machine, with the person inside it. For a heartbeat I forgot to breathe. Every survival instinct screamed, "Climb! Get out! Now!" But something else screamed louder, "Don't look away. This is history." I studied the image, forcing myself to stay calm. The creature didn't move for several seconds. It just stood there, in the middle of that unnatural clearing, holding the body like it weighed nothing. Then, without any visible signal, it started walking again. But this time, it wasn't moving aimlessly. It was heading straight toward the center of the clearing. The ground there looked smooth and dark, almost like stone instead of soil. As it approached, the thermal camera flickered again. A faint outline appeared beneath its feet, a circular pattern, like a symbol burned into the earth, warmer than the ground around it, but cooler than the creature itself. "What are you doing?" I whispered, unable to stop myself. The creature stepped into the center. The heat ring flared to life again, bright and complete, surrounding them both in a perfect circle. The air around my aircraft vibrated, a low, tremoring hum that I felt more than heard. Every hair on my arm stood on end. The ring pulsed, once, twice. On the third pulse, the thermal camera glitched, just for a fraction of a second. The image broke into static, then snapped back, and they were gone. No creature, no body, no heat, nothing. The clearing went back to normal, if you could call that place normal. The ring was invisible again. The center looked like plain soil. The only proof of what I'd just seen was in the recording. I sat there, hovering above the void they had left behind, my brain buzzing with disbelief. I had just filmed something no training manual, no protocol, no scientific explanation could justify. An entity not from here, carrying a human, using whatever that circle was, to vanish. My chest tightened. The missing hiker. If that really was him, then his last recorded moment on Earth was in my camera, on my watch, in my airspace. And I had no idea whether I had just watched a kidnapping or a rescue. Somehow, that thought was even worse. I hovered above the clearing for nearly a full minute after the creature vanished. Part of me expected it to reappear. Another part feared it would. But the thermal camera showed nothing now except empty forest. No heat spikes, no anomalies, no movement. Whatever I had witnessed, whatever had taken that man, it was over. My training finally elbowed its way past the shock. I needed to get the footage on the ground. I needed to report the last known coordinates of the missing man, and I needed to leave that clearing before the forest decided it wasn't done with me. "Base, this is 4-9, I said, forcing my voice steady. "Heading back to staging area. I have important visual evidence. Repeat, important visual evidence." The radio crackled, then faintly, "Copy. Return. Immediate." Immediate. That wasn't the usual protocol wording. I climbed altitude, and the moment I cleared the treetops, the interference vanished like a curtain dropping. The instruments reset. The hum in the frame stopped. The radio cleared. Sector Delta was behind me, but the weight of what I carried wasn't. The flight back felt longer than usual. My hands kept replaying the movements of the creature in the clearing, its smooth gait, its impossible height, the moment it looked straight at me, and the moment it disappeared with the man. I tightened my jaw. I saw it. I filmed it. It happened. I'm not insane. When I landed at the clearing where the search teams were assembled, several people were already waiting near the makeshift landing zone, far more than a typical search operation. I saw local sheriff's deputies, park rangers, and two men I didn't recognize. Dark jackets, unmarked badges, faces like stone. My stomach sank. Something told me this wasn't their first time dealing with an anomaly. The moment my rotor slowed, one of the unmarked men stepped forward. "Pilot 49?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. We need your footage. No introduction, no protocol, just that." "I'll hand everything over," I said carefully. "But first I need to report the location where..." "You'll report everything to us," the second man interrupted. "Not base, not the sheriff. Them." A chill crawled up my back. I climbed out of the aircraft slowly, keeping my expression as neutral as I could. They guided me toward a portable operations trailer, far removed from the main search team. Inside, I set down my helmet, pulled the data card from the camera system, and placed it on the table. The first man reached for it immediately. "I haven't told you what's on it yet," I said. He paused just for a second. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "We'll see it ourselves." I clenched my jaw. I needed control of that footage, even if only long enough to ensure they actually viewed it. So I said the one thing I knew would make them hesitate. "There's a man on that footage, the missing hiker. He was alive when I saw him, carried by something. You need to see what I saw before you start confiscating things." That made them stop. The second man gestured to a technician seated at a large monitor. "Play it." The technician inserted the card. The screen blinked. The footage began. The clearing, the heat rings, the creature, the man slung over its shoulder, the moment it looked at me, the moment it stepped into the center, the moment it vanished. Neither of the unmarked men reacted, not visibly, not even a twitch. They watched the entire thing with the expression of people viewing something they already believed existed, or something they already knew about. When the footage ended, I finally spoke. "What did I just see?" The first man turned toward me, calm, unreadable. "You saw the last known moments of a missing civilian." "That's not what I meant," I snapped. "What took him?" A long silence filled the trailer. Finally, the second man leaned forward slightly. "What you filmed," he said slowly, "was not human." He offered no follow-up, no explanation, no shock, just a cold, clinical statement. My breath caught. "Then we need to send a team into that clearing, now." Another silence. The first man folded his arms. "There will be no ground entry into that area," he said. "Not today, not ever." I stared at him. "There's a man missing." "There is no man," he replied flatly. "There is no creature. There is no clearing. As far as the official record is concerned, Sector Delta was never searched today." My stomach twisted. "You can't be serious." "We're very serious." He picked up the footage card and slipped it into his jacket. "No," I said, stepping forward. "That card is evidence. It's classified," he cut in, "and now irrelevant." I froze. Irrelevant? A man had disappeared. A creature had abducted him. I had seen it with my own eyes. "How is this irrelevant?" The man's eyes hardened. "Because you're going to forget what you think you saw." A cold weight settled in my spine. "What does that mean?" He gave a thin, humorless half smile. "It means this incident is already being handled like something dangerous, like something forbidden." And that's when I realized they weren't here to investigate what I filmed. They were here to bury it. For a moment I just stood there staring at the man who had casually announced that everything I'd seen, the creature, the clearing, the missing hiker, was about to be erased from reality. Not investigated, not explained, erased. "You can't just pretend this didn't happen," I said quietly. "There's a record, there's a flight log, there are transmissions, there's—" He cut me off with a small wave of his hand. "Sit down, pilot." The tone wasn't aggressive. That almost made it worse. It was cold, practiced. Like this wasn't the first time he'd given that order. I didn't sit. "I'm not signing anything until I know what's going on," I said, "and I'm not changing my report." He looked at the other man. It was a tiny gesture, but I felt the shift in the room. The second man stepped toward the door and quietly locked it. Now we were sealed inside. Just me, them, and the footage I no longer controlled. The first man finally sat down at the table and gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit," he repeated. "You're not under arrest yet. We're just going to have a conversation." The word "yet" settled into my bones like ice. Reluctantly, I sat. He placed a small black recorder on the table, pressed a button, and a red light blinked to life. "State your full name and position," he said. I hesitated, then answered. There was no real point in refusing. They already knew who I was. He asked me to describe the mission from the moment I received the call, the missing hiker, the coordinates, the grid search, the first anomalies, the torn fabric, the interference. I told him everything, up to a point. When I reached the moment I saw the creature for the first time, he watched me more closely, his expression sharpening. "And then?" he asked. I swallowed. "And then I saw something moving," I said. "A tall figure, not a bear, not a human. It was carrying what looked like a man." He didn't blink. "Describe it." "Tall, thin, limbs too long," I said slowly. "The head was elongated. It moved in a way I've never seen anything move, like it wasn't fully obeying gravity." He tilted his head. "And your assessment?" "My assessment," I said, staring straight at him, "is that it wasn't human, and that it was responsible for the disappearance of that hiker." Silence. Then he stopped the recorder. The red light died. "I appreciate your honesty," he said. His tone didn't match the words. He leaned back in the chair. "Now," he continued calmly, "we're going to record a second version." Something inside me recoiled. "A second version?" I repeated. "What's wrong with the first one?" "The first one is true," he said. "The second one is useful." He slid a sheet of paper across the table toward me. Typed lines. My name at the top. It was a script. I scanned it quickly, my pulse rising with every word. According to this official version, I had never seen a creature. The heat anomalies were equipment errors. The torn fabric was inconclusive. The clearing was just a natural gap in the canopy. The missing hiker was to be labeled presumed deceased due to environmental exposure. No mention of the column of heat, no ring in the clearing, no entity, no disappearance in front of my eyes. "You want me to lie?" I said. "We want you to protect yourself," he corrected, "and your career and your credibility." "My credibility?" I almost laughed. "You just watched what I watched. You saw it vanish. No," he said sharply. "I saw a heat anomaly and a corrupted data feed from a helicopter operating in a region with known electromagnetic instability." He said the line like he'd practiced it, like it already existed in another file, for another pilot, in another forest. "This has happened before," I said slowly. He didn't confirm, he didn't deny. That was confirmation. The other man, the quiet one, finally spoke. "You have a family, pilot?" The question hit harder than I expected. I thought of my wife, my kids, the house, the small, normal life I tried to keep separate from the parts of my job that involved dead bodies and desperate people. "Yes," I said. "Good," he replied. "Then you understand why it's better if this ends here." I stared at the paper again. "That man," I said, my voice low, "the hiker, he doesn't get a real story. He just becomes a statistic. He becomes whatever keeps the most people calm," the first man said. "That's how this works. And what happens if I refuse?" He held my gaze for a long moment. "Then your mental fitness as a pilot comes into question," he said quietly. "You will be grounded pending evaluation. Your license will be reviewed. Your career will effectively end. And this," he tapped the pocket where the card was, "will disappear anyway." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of procedure. I felt an anger building under my fear, heavy and hot. "You know what's down there," I said. "You've known for a long time, haven't you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slid the recorder back toward me and pressed the button again. The red light returned. "Begin when I say now," he said, "and read the statement, exactly as written." I stared at the paper, a script written to erase the truth, a script designed to make me complicit in my own silencing. He stared at me, waiting. The red light blinked. The forest wasn't the only thing trying to swallow what I'd seen. Now, the world on the surface wanted to swallow it too. I stared at the blinking red light, at the script on the table, at the two men who had just informed me that the truth was no longer mine to keep. He said, "Begin when I say now." But I didn't read it. Not yet. I just sat there, silent, unmoving, letting the seconds stretch thin. Finally, the man leaned forward and pressed the recorder again. "Pilot," he said calmly, "we need you to cooperate." I didn't answer, because answering meant choosing a side, my integrity, or my life as I knew it. He waited. When I still didn't speak, he exhaled quietly, the first sign of frustration I'd seen from him. "Take some time," he said flatly, "but understand something. The longer you hesitate, the harder we have to push." He stood. The other man unlocked the door. "You're not to leave the staging area," the first one said. "Your aircraft is grounded until further notice." Then they walked out, closing the metal door behind them. The moment the latch clicked, I felt the weight of everything collapse onto me at once. My hands shook, my throat tightened. I pressed my palms to my forehead. I had flown into electromagnetic storms, wildfire smoke so thick you couldn't see the sun, even high-altitude rotor failures. None of that had shaken me like this, because storms and failures make sense. Men like them do not. And the thing I had filmed? It was beyond any category we had words for. I stayed in that trailer for what felt like an hour, maybe more. When I finally stepped outside, the world felt wrong. The forest, Sector Delta, loomed in the distance, a dark green wall, indifferent and silent. Search teams moved around camp like normal, but their voices felt muted, distant, like I was underwater. Then I saw the unmarked men again, not approaching me, not looking at me, talking to the sheriff. The sheriff's posture was stiff, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He wasn't arguing, but he wasn't agreeing either. Then one of the men handed him a folder. The sheriff opened it, and his expression drained, just collapsed. He nodded once, sharply. Whatever was in that folder convinced him. He walked away without even glancing in my direction. My stomach twisted. They weren't just rewriting my story. They were rewriting everyone's. I spent the next 2 hours alone, sitting on the back bumper of an equipment trailer, staring at my boots, trying to decide what to do next. But by late afternoon, the operation was officially shut down. Search suspended, teams dismissed, ground units recalled. The missing hiker's family was told a version of events that made my blood boil. Unstable terrain, evidence of a fall, no recoverable remains, a lie wrapped in technical language. I wasn't allowed to fly home. They put me in a vehicle with a ranger and drove me back to the airfield. My helicopter would be transported later for inspection. Another lie. When I finally reached home that evening, I felt like I'd stepped into another life entirely, someone else's life. My wife hugged me, asked if the mission was hard. I lied. For the first time in my career, I lied to the person I trusted most. It was a long day, I said. Weather was rough, no luck finding the man. She kissed my cheek, relieved I was safe. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the creature, not because of the clearing, because of the silence from base. No calls, no debriefing, nothing. When I checked my flight logs online, the entire entry for the mission had been removed, not altered, not corrected, deleted. The mission didn't exist. I tried calling another pilot I trusted, someone who wouldn't panic, someone level-headed. But the moment he picked up and I said, "Something happened on today's mission," he cut in quickly. "I can't talk about that, brother. Don't bring it up again." Click. Call ended. That's when the real fear began. Not the creature, not the forest, the people, because people can follow you. 3 days after the incident, I noticed a black SUV parked across from my house. Not illegal, not threatening, just parked. Next day, a different car. Next night, a different one again. Never the same vehicle twice, never anyone stepping out, always just watching. The message was clear: don't talk, don't remember, don't try. On the 4th night, around 2 a.m., I woke to a faint sound outside, like gravel shifting under someone's boot. I went to the window. Nothing. But when I opened the front door, I found something on the porch, a small envelope. No name, no sender. Inside was a single sentence, typed on plain paper: "Fly quiet." My heart slammed into my ribs. I looked up and down the street, but it was empty, silent. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and sat in the dark for a long time. That's when I realized the creature in the forest wasn't the thing I needed to fear. The thing I had to fear was everything that followed after I filmed it. For a while, I tried to do what they wanted: fly quiet, act normal, pretend that Sector Delta was just another square of forest on a map. I went back to routine missions: medical evacuations, small search operations, supply drops to isolated communities. I flew, I landed, I filed reports. But there was a fracture in everything now. Every time I looked down at a shadow between trees, I half expected to see that tall, impossible shape again. Every time my instruments glitched for even a second, my body tensed, ready for the hum in the metal, the heat rings on the screen. None of it came back, but the memory didn't leave. And then the questions started, not from strangers, from the one place where I couldn't ignore them, my own mind. Who was that hiker, really? Why had the authorities shut down the search so quickly? Why were those unmarked men already waiting before I landed with the footage? That last question bothered me the most. If my mission log had been wiped, if my transmissions were being rewritten, if people were being told it was just bad weather and no recoverable remains, then there had to be another record, somewhere, something they couldn't control as easily. So one night, when my family was asleep and the street was finally empty of slow-rolling cars and watching headlights, I sat down at my laptop and did something I should have done from the beginning. I searched for the missing man, not as a case number, not as a mission, as a person. His name hadn't been given to me during the briefing, only age, sex, and approximate last known position. Standard procedure is to keep the radio chatter impersonal. But I had overheard a ranger mention a name when I landed, right before the unmarked men pulled me away. I still remembered it. I typed it into the search bar. At first, what came up was what you'd expect: social media profiles, an unfinished blog, a few photos of him smiling with friends at trailheads and mountain summits. He looked like any outdoor enthusiast in his late 20s. Lean, sunburned nose, always squinting into sunlight. I could almost imagine him as just another person I'd gone out to find. But the deeper I scrolled, the stranger it got. Buried past the normal photos and trip logs, I found a different trail. Interviews, forum posts, token accounts on websites with names that didn't exactly scream casual hobby. He wasn't just a hiker, he was part of something. A community that documented unexplained aerial phenomena. Field expeditions to high-activity locations. Night watch groups that camped in forests with thermal cameras, parabolic microphones, and sky tracking software. He had been interested in what most people would call UFOs. Obsessed even. There were comments from him on long threads. I think they're using specific geographic nodes. Watch for temperature spikes in circular clearings. Certain forests are more active than others. Circular clearings. Temperature spikes. My pulse climbed. I opened another link, an archived video from a year before his disappearance. Poor resolution, shaky camera, but his voice was clear. He stood in front of a tree line somewhere at night, holding a flashlight. "If something happens to me on one of these trips," he said, half laughing, half serious, "just know I went looking for them. I wasn't just unlucky, I was curious." He turned the camera, showing a patch of forest behind him. "I think this place is one of the doors," he said. One of the doors. My skin went cold. I paused the video and rewound that last sentence 3 times. The way he said doors shook me. Not like a metaphor, but like a classification. Like he genuinely believed some places were entry points. I checked the upload location, coordinates listed in the description. They were blurred in the actual video, but not in the old cached text version. I copied them, dropped them into a map, and stared. They were less than 4 miles from Sector Delta. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. This wasn't some random disappearance. He didn't just wander into the forest and get lost. He went looking for whatever was inside it. And he found it. I dug deeper. On a small forum hidden behind layers of registration and outdated layouts, I found one more thing, a message posted under his username about 6 months before he vanished. It read, "Some of them don't take people by force. Sometimes it's an agreement. You just have to be willing to go." An agreement. I sat there for a long time staring at that line. What if what I saw in that clearing wasn't an abduction? What if the missing hiker wasn't a victim in the way I'd assumed? What if he had wanted to go? The idea felt wrong and yet horribly plausible. He believed those places were doors. He camped in those forests often. He knew about heat rings and anomalies before I ever saw them. Maybe he'd finally reached whatever he'd been searching for. And I, flying overhead in my helicopter, clinging to protocols and procedures, had just witnessed the end of his search. Or the beginning of it. I closed the laptop slowly, my head spinning. Down in Sector Delta, I had filmed something impossible. But sitting in my own kitchen, with the cheap light above the table buzzing faintly, I realized something even stranger. The missing man had gone into that forest seeking contact. The creature that carried him might not have been a hunter, it might have been an escort. And suddenly, the most chilling question wasn't, what took him? It was, why did they want me to never see it? After discovering the truth about the missing hiker, his posts, his recordings, his belief that some forests were doors, I couldn't pretend anymore that what I'd witnessed was a simple disappearance. But knowing the truth didn't make me safer. It made me a threat. And the people watching me knew it. The black SUVs didn't stop showing up. They just changed patterns. Some days, they parked far down the street, almost out of sight. Other days closer, always staggered. Always different cars. Never the same driver twice. Then the phone calls started. Not threatening, not even spoken, just silence. Always at odd hours, 3:12 a.m., 4:02 a.m., 2:47 a.m., always silence. That was when I realized something. They weren't warning me anymore. They were monitoring whether I would break. Would I talk? Would I share the footage? Would I show someone where Sector Delta really was? They didn't know I no longer had the footage, but they assumed I might still have copies. I didn't. I had been too shocked, too numb to think clearly that day. I trusted the aircraft's internal system to back up the data. A stupid mistake. And yet, there was one thing they hadn't erased. Me, my memory, my eyes, my account. For weeks, I lived in a half-shadowed fear that someone would knock on my door and make everything disappear in one night. But no one knocked. They preferred something scarier. They preferred watching, and gradually, quietly, I started to understand why. Because they knew the same thing I did. The truth wasn't in a video card. It wasn't in a mission log. It wasn't in some corrupted thermal file. The truth was in what I saw. And even if they erased the world's record, they couldn't erase my record. So they tried something else. Discredit me. They told the aviation board I had suffered mission-related stress. They scheduled an evaluation. They grounded me temporarily. Every document was wrapped in polite language, but the message was clear: say anything, and no one will believe you. For a while, I almost accepted that fate. I was tired, scared, lost. Then one morning, I got a letter. Not a typed warning, not an official notice, a handwritten letter, no name, no return address. Inside was a single sentence: "You're not the only one who's seen them." My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't from the authorities. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. And on the back of the paper, I found coordinates. Not for Sector Delta. Somewhere else, somewhere far. Another forest, another door. I stared at the numbers for a long time, the memory of that clearing burning behind my eyes, those heat rings, that pulsing energy, that tall, impossible being carrying a man who might not have been afraid at all. Then I realized something that changed everything. The unmarked men weren't protecting the public from panic. They were protecting the doorways. Protecting something that has been here longer than us, something that moves in patterns we don't understand, something that doesn't want to be found. And I, by pure accident, had filmed a moment I was never meant to see. That's why I'm telling you this now. Not because I want recognition, not because I want fear, but because silence has a cost. That missing hiker wasn't a random victim. He was a seeker. A volunteer in a game we barely comprehend. And the creature, I no longer believe it was hunting him. I think it was answering him. I think the doors open for those who call them. And I think that clearing, those heat circles, those pulses of energy, was some kind of crossing, a threshold. I saw a crossing. No matter how much they erase or deny or threaten, they cannot change the fact that I was in the air, above that clearing, when something otherworldly reached into our world and took someone with it. Maybe willingly, maybe not. I don't know. What I do know is this: if those doorways exist, and I'm certain they do, then what I saw in that clearing wasn't the first crossing. Just the first one I noticed. And maybe not the last, because the last line of the handwritten letter haunts me more than any creature, any SUV, any silent phone call. It was scribbled below the coordinates, almost as an afterthought. When they open everywhere. I don't know who sent that letter. I don't know why they trusted me. But I know this: I'm done flying quiet. This is my account. This is what I witnessed. This is how the truth survived when everything else was taken.